There's a story that as long as this tower still stands, there'll always be 6 witches in Canewdon, 3 of cotton and 3 of silk. And every time a stone falls from this tower, one of the witches dies and is replaced. People have been telling stories about this place for a very long time. So we brought Hetty to see if we can find out what remains and why these stories have stuck to this place. The church sits high above the River Crouch, a landmark for miles. Made of ragstone, it's said to have been erected after the Battle of Agincourt. So tall it was used as a navigational aid for boats and later as a wartime lookout. The physical history here is straightforward, but what's less straightforward are the stories that have become attached to this place. The strongest of those is a tale of witches. It's said, as long as the tower stands, 6 witches remain in the village, 3 of cotton and 3 of silk. When a stone falls, one dies and another takes her place. There are older threads here too, a handful of 16th century witchcraft accusations. Later, tales of running around the church at midnight anti-clockwise to conjure the devil or to join the coven. A headless figure in the churchyard. A grey lady drifting toward the river. None of this can be proved, but that's not the point. The point is that the stories attached themselves here and stayed. Every legend needs its figurehead, and the figurehead at the centre of this one is said to lie here. George Pickingill. He lived here in the 1800s, a farm labourer, poor, barely a trace of him in the record, but the village remembered him, not for what he was in the ledger books, but for what people whispered he could do. They say his wife is buried here too, her grave marked with a stone from 1887. As for George himself, the story goes that he lies somewhere in this churchyard, though no one ever marked the spot. A fitting end for a man who only survives now in what people said about him. Nearby lies another link to his story, Joseph Henry Garner, husband of the woman the village called Granny Garner. She has no marker of her own, but the records show she was buried near her husband. The folklorist Eric Maple spoke to her when he came here in the late 1950s. She was the last surviving villager to have met Pickingill. Garner remembered Pickingill from her childhood and told Maple what her own mother had said, that he was the leader of a local coven and that people came from outside the village seeking his knowledge. In the years after Pickingill's death, the stories grew. People said he was a cunning man, that he had the power over the witches of Canewdon, that he could curse a man or call the animals out of the hedge with a whistle. How much of it was true, it's hard to say. What's certain is the stories stuck to him and to this place. But why did they stay here so strongly? Walking up to the tower, you can feel part of the answer in the stone. It's the one thing you can point to from miles away, the thing the stories could hang on. A witch needs a place to be seen, and a tower on a ridge is a perfect place. The tower itself was erected in the early 1400s in celebration of Henry V's victory at Agincourt. The stonework still carries the shields of Henry V and his family, but stories only last if someone keeps telling them. And in the late 1950s, Eric Maple came to Canewdon just in time. He walked these same churchyard paths and collected the living memories while there was still someone left to give them, and wrote it all down before it faded. That's why, centuries later, people still look at this church and talk about the witches of Canewdon, not just because the tower stands, but because someone came, sat down and listened, and what he heard was saved. Standing here now, the physical evidence is quite ordinary. The stone, the grass, the view across the river, but it's the stories that are the link to our past here, not just the physical. Stories so dark and potent that the village lockup and stocks are still maintained by the gate, just in case. Some places keep their history in objects and foundations. This one kept it in the tales ordinary people continue to tell. This tower is an anchor that ties these stories to this place. Perhaps that's what places like this do. They provide a physical connection, not just to the land of our ancestors, but to their stories as well. Stories say when a stone falls, one witch dies and another takes her place. Maybe that's why they endure. Every falling stone is a story being passed on, and all it takes to reconnect is to slow down enough to hear what they've been carrying all along. Have you ever heard a version of this legend, or walked past a church and wondered what stories it's holding? We'd love to hear them in the comments. Thanks for travelling with us. We'll see you on the next journey.